Welcome back to Piers Uncensored. Well, model Emily Ratajkowski, one of my favourite dimwits, sparked controversy recently by claiming that getting divorced before 30 is chic.
So it seems that a lot of ladies are getting divorced before they turn 30. And as someone who got married at 26, has been separated for a little over a year, 32, I don't think there's anything better. If there is nothing better than being in your 30s, still being hot, maybe having a little bit of your own money, figuring out what you want to do with your life. For all of those people who are stressed or feeling stressed about that, about being divorced, like it's good. Congratulations.
It's like, congratulations. God, she's ridiculous. Well, divorce is certainly becoming more common, and marriage itself is becoming a fierce frontier in the raging culture wars. On the one side, there are feminists rejecting a dated concept. On the other, so-called tradwives who think it binds our societies together. Well, tradwives spend their days dutifully cooking and cleaning while their husbands go to work. Estee Williams, who's a 25-year-old tradwife, has amassed hundreds of thousands of followers by showing off her tradwife life online. She even gave up a job to be the perfect wife. So is she and others like her saving society? Or are they selling out the sisterhood? Well, joining me now is traditional wife and influencer Estee Williams, and in the studio the socialist and author Grace Blakely and YouTuber Pearl Davis. This might be the best lineup in the history of television for a debate of this nature. So I'm very excited. All right, Estee Williams, let's start with you as the trad wife. Sell it to me. Why do you think we should all go back to having trad wives in marriages?
Well, I believe that... I actually don't believe that everyone should be a traditional wife. I think that it is a choice, and I think it's a lovely choice if a woman wants to simply be a wife and a mother, and that's enough for her. And it's a simple way of living with traditional gender roles. It's balanced, and we don't have to do it all as women. I think we've proven that it's possible, but at what cost, right?
Right, and in terms of what being a trad wife involves, what do you think it means to be a trad wife?
Well, to adhere to traditional gender roles. So what I mean by that is the husband, he is the provider of the home. He goes out, he works, and he knows how to protect his family if need be. And the wife, she's the homemaker. She does the cooking, she does the cleaning, and she takes care of the home and children, if there are any, and herself, of course. So it's adhering to traditional gender roles.
Okay, Grace, I'm sure you thoroughly agree with this, don't you?
Look, I mean, what Estee's just said about the fact that women should be able to choose, obviously I completely agree. And, you know, men should be able to choose as well. I think the feminist critique of traditional gender roles and gender ideology isn't that some people like to stay at home and others don't. It's that you shouldn't be bound to pursue a certain life based on the sex that you were born into at birth. The one issue I do have is, I know actually a friend of mine whose sister got involved in the tradwife movement in the US, basically. She was quite young. She got married to someone who was like, this is what we're doing. You're going to be a tradwife. And basically came to regret it. She felt like she'd been controlled, like her life became very small, and she couldn't get out. She couldn't escape because, you know, she'd lost all her friends, and this has become basically her entire life. And it concerns me that sometimes we see this narrative on social media that women have to be a certain way in order to get a husband. So you have to be this like particular model of femininity for people to love you. And I think that's really sad, because I don't think anyone should have to shave off any parts of themselves to be loved or to you know, find a husband or, you know, anything like that.
All right, Pearl, what do you think?
I think it's a good that we're seeing a return to traditionalism. Yeah, I think it's a good thing.
How
I don't know.
How is the feminist movement of the last few decades, how has it gone for you? I mean, when you look at it and see how women have progressed, do you think it's been largely a force for good, or do you think, as the tradwives do, that perhaps we've lost that sense of gender rules, for want of a better phrase, which actually work very well for many people?
I mean, we've seen families disappear. You know, I saw a study the other day that said only 25% of, I mean, this is an American stat, but American households have families, so I guess there's positives and there's negatives, but it's like at what cost, you know?
What to you?
150 years ago, the average woman had 7 kids, 85% of people were married.
I mean,
You know,
there was also
now,
much higher infant mortality,
but
and women died very young, and
I mean, women were more depressed than ever before. We're on antidepressants.
I mean, there are a lot of
women over the age of 45 are the least happy demographic.
There are a lot of very
complex
reasons for that.
Well,
I think it's
and the issue
to...
you have is women like Emily Ratajkowski. You know, marriage. Again, I've said this before. Marriage isn't marriage anymore. The average marriage is 7 years. We have things like no fault divorce, leave if you're unhappy. So
what does that mean, marriage isn't marriage anymore? Because there have been so many marriages over the course of history where people have been very unhappy. Either the man or the woman has been very unhappy. And they've been forced basically to stay in a marriage. It could have been an abusive marriage. It could have been an emotionally abusive marriage. And that would, we have one life. Why would you spend it with someone who doesn't make you happy?
Marriage was about duty. And this is the problem we have with women. Like men tend to be better people than us. Yeah, they really do. They tend to. No. They tend to do the right thing.
They are a much maligned species. I agree.
I mean, there's a reason we have phrases like a man of his word, right?
Yeah.
Not a woman of her word. Because men will actually stick things out. Women, when shit gets hard, we just leave. And you're proving my point. What was your first answer? My happiness, right?
Of course. Everyone deserves to be happy. Everyone deserves to be loved.
The family doesn't work when it's about you. It's supposed to be about your kids.
Well,
and that's the problem in
about
modern.
everyone.
There's
a balance and a compromise in relationships. Am I allowed to talk now?
Okay, go on.
Look, I think relationships are about balance. They're about compromise. They're about knowing, understanding yourself, learning to, know and understand another person. Eventually, potentially, if you want to, bringing children into the world and teaching them how to do that as well. Teaching them to balance a sense of their own identity with the love that they have for another person. And, for example, I know an older woman, actually, who's a friend of our family, who got divorced at about 60. She had, this lovely family. They were together since they were 18. And she said, I got to a point after I'd stopped being a mother and, I was just kind of getting on, I realized I'd lost my sense of who I was. And I didn't really feel like I knew who I was anymore because I'd always just been a wife and a mother. And I wanted to go out and explore that. And I think that's fantastic. Good for her.
What is traditionalism?
I don't know what you think traditionalism is.
I would say a modern mentality is me before the family. I would say traditionalism is the family before me, especially in women.
You're onto something.
And so what it's interesting you said 60-year-olds because, I've interviewed 600, 700 people roughly in the past year and a half. I've done hundreds of shows interviewing people about relationships. And what I find is the 60-year-olds a lot of those women led their daughters astray. There's a reason we're in this mess, right? A lot of those women had the wrong mentality when it came to marriage and had exactly the mentality that you're talking about.
Which is prioritize balancing one's own sense of identity with compromise and relationship with someone else.
Myself before the marriage.
But that's, again,
and it's really unfortunate because I would say the women of our generation really are suffering because of the advice of the women of the past.
There's an interesting point here, right, which is that we do live in a very individualistic society and we're all told, actually, I think a lot of the time in our relationships as well, you have to be a certain way if you want to receive love. You have to abide by these norms. Yeah. You have to be a certain level of attractiveness. You have to earn a certain amount of money. It's all about you. And that's not what love is.
All right, let me bring in... All right, listen, it's actually been very interesting listening to this. Let me bring back in Estee. So Estee, in terms of trad values, like my wife puts the bins out, for example. Right? I've never asked her to. She's just adopted that role in our house. So I never put the bins out. I don't know if I should feel ashamed of myself. I do other stuff, but I don't put the bins out. As a trad wife, do you put your bins out? Is that part of the gender rule of the 50s? Is that what used to happen? Or is the man supposed to do that? I mean, how do these rules work in reality?
To be honest, it has nothing... I don't want to say nothing. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the 50s and the 60s. Especially in our household, I enjoy the aesthetic, and I think that's where people get a little mixed up with my channel. But to answer your question, actually, I don't put the trash bins out. My husband does that, but I think we have this this thing in our household where he does most of the outdoor work. I do all the indoor work. Of course, he works and provides, and I'm the homemaker. That's what works for us. But
in relation to what Pearl said, is part of that a sense of being dutiful and having no problem actually with being dutiful in a marriage?
Yes, I believe that traditionalism it is putting your family before yourself, and I think it is having those traditional values that were once definitely more in place in God, family, and love, and we live in a very selfish society now. You know, you see self-love printed everywhere, right? And women, speaking of divorce and marriage, women are leaving marriage far more easier than men, and they are doing it because they think there's something better out there for them, that the grass is greener on the other side, and they're finding out that is wrong, and they're going through divorce after divorce. And you know, marriage is a bond, and it's a sacred bond where two become one under God, and that's beautiful, and you have to protect that at all costs. And I think part of that is putting your partner's needs before your own every single day. And I try and do my best, and I think of my husband as much as I can and what will please him and make him happy.
I love the sound of this. Sorry, I mean, obviously I don't. I wouldn't dare to express an opinion.
I think that's, you know, a lovely way to think about relationships if it's reciprocal. Yes. You're talking about God and family and tradition.
This is the
Paul, can I please finish my sentence?
Life isn't about keeping
I thought women
score.
were supposed to, you know, recognise their place and learn not to speak over other people. No, so look, I think it's reciprocated. You talked there about religion and about Christianity and about self-love. You know, the kind of most important commandment. There's two most important commandments: love your neighbour as yourself. So that requires a foundation of self-love and respect for oneself and knowledge of one's own identity and what one wants to be able to receive and give the love that you're going to have in a solid and healthy relationship. I think it has to be mutual.
You're not looking forward to getting you all back in about 10 years' time to see if either of you two are married and have stayed married, and to see particularly, Estee, if you're still married and still happily married and still feel exactly the same way you do today about what marriage should be. That would be a really interesting show in about 10 years.
And also, how happy we are in general with our lives and all the other many rich aspects of our relationships and our careers and all of these things.
Yep. Great debate. Thank you very much, ladies. Nice to see you all.